Marketplace is supported by Viking, dedicated to bringing travelers closer to the destination. Viking offers a small ship experience with no children and no casinos. Discover more at Viking.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Federal Reserve is just not in a hurry.
We think our policy stance is in a good place where we're well positioned to react to incoming developments.
From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by MarketWatch. From housing prices to inflation, the market is uncertain. MarketWatch has tools to help navigate the road ahead. MarketWatch, don't short yourself. And by Odoo, dedicated to providing software designed to scale with businesses. Odoo's programs for manufacturing, accounting, and more aim to provide building blocks for creating a custom software suite. Odoo, what small businesses need. And by Pure Storage. In a world of fragmented systems, Pure Storage delivers a single, consistent, as-a-service platform for all data storage needs across on-premises, cloud, and hosted environments. More at purestorage.com.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. It is Wednesday today. This one is the 18th of June. Good as always to have you along, everybody. Here is the very quick headline from Fed Chair Jay Powell's press conference today, at which the central bank, to absolutely nobody's surprise, did absolutely nothing with interest rates. This meeting was always going to be about what Powell said, and what Powell said was that the Fed is content to wait and see what tariffs actually do. But that, according to the central bank, the best guesses are that unemployment is going to go up and economic growth is going to go down in the near-term future. As for the other part of the economic triad,
if you look at the forecast, you will see that people do generally expect inflation to move up and then to come back down. But we can't just assume that. Of course, we don't know that. And, our job is to make sure, one of our jobs is to make sure that a one-time increase in inflation doesn't turn into an inflation problem.
And there is real challenge with that. We are in, as we have said before, a tariff environment unlike anything we've seen in 90 years. So even the Federal Reserve, with all the PhD economists it's got on staff, is still trying to figure things out.
I think we have to learn a little more about tariffs. I don't know what the right way for us to react will be. I think it's hard to know with any confidence how we should react until we see really the size of the effects, and then we can start to make a better judgment.
Which is where the vibes versus hard data thing that we've been talking about for a while now comes in.
I think we can take the time to do that because unemployment is 4.2%. Wages are moving up. Real wages are moving up at a healthy clip now. And inflation is 2.3% headline inflation over a 12-month basis. So it's a good economy and a solid economy with decent growth.
Which, having told you all that, I guess I could have saved us all a couple of minutes of our lives and just played you this next quote, which Powell said in one form or another maybe half a dozen times today.
Overall, again, the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to economic developments, and for now, and we'll be watching the data carefully.
Again, inflation higher, unemployment higher, growth lower in the months and year or so to come, thanks to tariffs, so said the central bank today. Wall Street didn't really pay much heed one way or t'other. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. The Fed's got a lot on its plate right now. Tariffs, the labor market, all the usual suspects. And also, as of late last week, oil. So far, crude hasn't gone up all that much, all things considered. A 7% gain over the past 5 days, but still cheaper than it was in January. That said, the global oil market is a skittish beast. And with things as tense as they are in the Middle East, might it be wise, do you suppose, for the central bank to dust off its oil shock playbook? Marketplace's Matt Levin has this one.
If there really was a Fed chair's playbook for dealing with oil shocks, Chapter 1 would probably be called The 1970s, What Not to Do.
We had a very bad experience in the 1970s in which oil prices jumped, inflation kept ratcheting higher. The Fed would tighten occasionally, inflation would come down, but not down far enough.
Economist Don Cohn joined the Fed shortly after the 1973 Arab oil embargo, when Gulf states at war with Israel stopped selling fuel to the U.S. Cohn says it wasn't necessarily the soaring gas prices themselves that were the problem. It was the impact those gas prices had on the psychology of American consumers.
You have to make sure inflation expectations are anchored and people don't expect prices to continue to rise and rise more generally than just oil.
Fast forward to 2022 when inflation was already being stoked by pandemic shortages, and then Russia invades Ukraine, sending oil over $100 a barrel.
The oil price shock of 2022 suddenly made inflation a much more urgent problem for the Fed.
Bill Adams is an economist at Comerica Bank.
Which is why they pivoted so quickly from stimulus to a restrictive monetary policy, high interest rates.
Those rate hikes eventually mostly tamed inflation, and today inflation expectations are relatively stable. Stephanie Aliaga at JP Morgan Asset Management says that if oil prices do spike in the near future, J. Powell should worry less about inflation writ large and more about a softening economy.
Let's just think about what happens if we do have a shock in the price of gas. Well, consumers are going to feel that pinch in their wallets, and particularly in an economy like we have today,
where consumer wallets are already kind of stretched. Or maybe we'll just get lucky and the Fed's oil shock playbook won't include a chapter on 2025. I'm Matt Levin for Marketplace.
President Trump is, and we know this because this is what he calls himself, a tariff man. What he's not is a consistent tariff man. And that on-again, off-again way he has of doing trade policy is doing things to this economy, including but not limited to the supply chain. The specific piece of which we are going to look at today is what is happening at our ports. Weston LaBar is the Chief Strategy Officer at Waterfront Logistics here in Los Angeles. Mr. LaBar, welcome back to the program, sir. Good to have you on.
Great to be here. Thanks, Scott.
It's been 5-6 weeks, I guess, since we talked to you. It has been, as I'm sure you're aware, an eventful 5-6 weeks in the land of supply chains and moving stuff around this economy. What's the state of play for you?
Yeah, it has been eventful. We've seen the ebbs and flows. Physically, you can see the volume come through the facility. You can see it sit for a little bit longer than normal and then slowly leave the facility as customers draw down on inventory. You see days of very light traffic coming in and out of the facility, and then you see mad dashes when there's updates on tariffs where you see a ton of truck traffic coming in and out of our facility. Terminals at the port shut down on certain days, creating logistical nightmares, and then even down to local businesses. Local pizza shop, I was talking to the owner, typically full on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, absolutely empty. Why? Because there's not workers in and around the port to go visit it. And that's just one of many examples.
I imagine aside from the pizza shop and having to figure out what he's doing, the inconsistency is really challenging for you as you're trying to run a business here.
That's the biggest challenge that we're dealing with. We like to do here what we call happy flow, where you're able to schedule things and have your trucks working every day, be able to have consistent labor orders, and have products coming in and going out in a pretty consistent fashion. The problem you have with these ebbs and flows is you can have a lot of product coming in at one point in time and then not leaving, which obviously creates space constraints. You have other days where you may have a pretty empty facility as you're waiting for more ships to show up with cargo. And then from a frontline workers perspective, if you don't keep drivers busy, if you don't keep warehouse workers busy, you can lose them. And the problem you have is one day you may need X amount of workers, and on the next day you might need X times 10. Well, that's what's most challenging, both for a business from a continuity perspective, but then also really on the frontline worker who's trying to understand, is he going to have work today or tomorrow?
Right. Let's say, just for argument's sake, because obviously we can't know what the president is going to do day to day. Let's say the 90-day pause expires basically on schedule. Can you just restart? Are you ready to go, or is that going to be more hassle?
There's a scale up and a scale down period. One of the things that we've done to be prudent is take a look at our equipment, for instance. So, do we have too many trucks in different markets based on the freight that's coming into them? Well, you can't necessarily, if you've right-sized your fleet to be cautious from a business perspective, you can't necessarily just add a whole bunch of trucks tomorrow. You need another flex up time. And I think that's the biggest thing that you're thinking about is when things are light, you don't want to overspend, but at the same time, when things come back, you don't want to be in a position where you can't service your customers. So there's a constant balancing act between what's going on today and what may or may not happen tomorrow.
So look, cards on the table here. Is this costing you money?
Yeah, it costs everybody money, right? When a truck's not moving, you're paying for that asset, whether it's moving or whether it's parked. So there's an impact to the business, there's an impact to the frontline workers, but we're doing our best to hold steady because we know that we're going to be busy here in the next couple months. We just don't know when that's going to start.
Speaking of busy in the next couple of months, yes, I know it's only June and or July really soon. Well, it's definitely going to be July really soon, which is when a lot of the stuff comes in for fall. Where is that in your calculation? Sort of the back to school and the holiday shopping season?
Yeah, it depends on where products are coming from. There's a couple different things to keep in mind, but we still have products coming from places like Italy. We have tomato sauce that comes from Italy. We have fashion items that come from Vietnam. Those things are still coming through pretty consistently. It's more of the China-related items that you're seeing a lot of the disruptions in how the patterns from the supply chain are coming. But the thing people forget as well is even if you've got product coming from Korea or Vietnam or Cambodia, a lot of times it's coming on a smaller vessel from those countries to China and then on a bigger vessel from China to the United States. So there's been disruption in the shipping lanes also that can add cost to moving product and can create disruption from a consistency of shipping from an origin port in Asia to the U.S.
Right. Wes LeBar, he's Chief Strategy Officer at Waterfront Logistics. Mr. LeBar, thanks for your time, sir. I really appreciate the update.
Thanks for having me, Kai. I really appreciate it.
This is 91.5 WBEZ. We have the numbers coming your way in just a couple moments. WBEZ is not just about sending stories out to our community. We're about reflecting and serving and connecting you to people and ideas and events. Look, we need to understand one another. That is a fact. We realize that we are in this moment, that we do really need to understand one another. This station is important to you. The local news helps us understand each other. It's the tail end of this pledge drive. We have only a little over something like 2 hours left. So the time is running out right now for you to make your monthly donation during
in communities about schools like you're late, not
informed.
The news today about a tenth of one
loss and the hat are the reasons I gave at WBEZ.org.
Let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's off 44 points today, about a tenth of 1%, 42,171. The NASDAQ inched up 25 points. That's a 10% there, 19,546. The S&P 500 basically flat, 59 and 80. 210 years ago today, Napoleon was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo. So let's take that occasion and, current events to look at some defense-related stocks. General Dynamics, whose products include nuclear submarines and Abrams tanks, down 1%. Hexcel, which made the landing pads for the Apollo 11 lunar module, down 1 3/10% today. Palantir Technologies, which makes AI and data analysis tools, that's the simple and most charitable way to describe that, added 1 3/10% today. Bonds down, yield on the 10-year T-note up to 4.39%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace Numbers is supported by Commvault, cyber resilience for continuous business. Marketplace is supported by Amazon Business, dedicated to helping businesses save time on office tasks and empower leaders with business buying solutions that support teams to focus on growing the business. Learn about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com. And by Kintsugi, helping e-commerce and software companies automate and optimize their sales tax work with AI. Kintsugi AI is designed to reduce compliance risks and streamline processes. More at trykintsugi.com. And by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to raising awareness and accelerating action on America's fiscal challenges to build a brighter economic future for the next generation. Learn more at pgpf.org.
You're listening to Marketplace here on WBEZ. Coming up by the .com forum
That much is in the ether
at the Loyola University Museum of Art. This is WBEZ.
Corporate America is betting big on artificial intelligence. We are going to be able to, which means better living standards for productive, actually, with smaller, in fact, the American labor force. Corporate America is betting big on artificial intelligence. That much is in the ether already. Obviously, that's going to affect the American labor force, white-collar workers specifically. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy said this week, just as the most recent example, that his company is going to just be smaller in the years to come, fewer people. The bet here is that companies, and thus the whole economy, are going to be able to be as productive, more productive actually, with more AI and fewer workers. Higher productivity, as we've said before on the program, means wages can go up without adding to inflation, which means better living standards for people in this economy. However, there ain't no guarantee that rising productivity from AI will lift all boats, as Marketplace's Megan McCarty-Carino reports.
You could say that AI is bringing productivity gains to the voiceover industry by letting companies do more with less. But that's not really how voice actor George Washington III would put it.
There's just less work. That took jobs away.
Convincing synthetic voices are increasingly popping up on customer service hotlines, corporate trainings, and audiobooks like this one.
Caliph felt his heart pounding and his guts twisting.
Washington, who also runs an advocacy organization for voiceover professionals, says he still makes a comfortable living doing video games and commercials.
Through all of life's changes, we're here for you.
But he worries the opportunities will continue to shrink.
Because people will say they don't want to pay for what we do. If you get paid 30 cents a word, you are a lot more expensive than if they just plug it in, use AI voices.
Washington has seen the hollowing out of an industry before. He grew up in a factory town in Illinois.
That literally had the sign, will the last person leaving Kankakee please turn off the lights, right? As industry moved out and Kankakee converted to a service economy, I watched it, right? I saw it happen.
And he fears the move to AI could also leave people behind.
There have been lots of episodes of productivity increase. In fact, we could probably say most instances in world history when productivity has gone up and only a few people have benefited, so it didn't filter down.
Simon Johnson is a Nobel Prize-winning economist at MIT who co-authored the book Power and Progress about the often lopsided gains brought by new technologies. Take the Industrial Revolution, the biggest sustained leap in productivity the world has ever seen. It started in the late 18th century in the north of England with advances in textile production.
There were fortunes to be made in the cotton industry, but something was preventing the higher productivity from filtering down to higher wages.
He argues early inventions replaced the work of skilled artisans with repetitive, lower-paying jobs. For more than half a century, real wages stagnated or even fell.
And so if I say to you, congratulations, AI revolution is here, you will get higher wages in 60 years. I think you should say, well, hold on a minute. What if we get it sooner? What would that take?
Johnson says innovations are more likely to spread prosperity when they create new, specialized tasks for humans, or when they assist workers but don't replace them. It's not clear that is the path we're on, says Anton Koronek, an economist at the University of Virginia.
With the rollout of the current generative AI systems, I'm concerned that they will actually lead to an increase in inequality.
Agentic AI can now perform some complex tasks without human supervision. And in an uncertain economy, companies might be eager to cut costs by replacing workers with AI.
If the same amount of output can be produced by a lot fewer workers, it shows up positively in productivity statistics, but it would show up as basically a lack of growth.
To voice actor George Washington III, it sometimes feels like he's watching a replay of what happened in his hometown when factories shut down.
To see people know that there is an end coming to the thing that they do and not know what the next step is going to be, it's a terrifying thing.
At 57, he doesn't really have a backup plan. He's betting there will always be a value to the human voice, and he's using his own to speak up for a kind of progress that brings everyone along. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino for Marketplace.
This is WBEZ 91.5 FM. In just a little bit, we are going to hear about the Trump administration's feud with Harvard and how it has axed research grants and how that may affect some research into rare eye issues and genetic disorders. That and much more ahead here on WBEZ. Look, when you think about public media, one of the things I think you may think about is the notion of coming together. That is what makes this station different. We're built by the great BEZ
comes together to support public serious threat. You can also
luxury way. Nation truly is the answer.